welcome to episode 137 of Carmudgeon Show. My name is Derek Tam HyphenScott, and that is Jason Cammisa.
In some universe, that I suppose could be true. This is part of the Haggerty Podcast Network. This episode is about grudge matches.
Yeah, we beat the shit out of each other on camera. It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And we discuss Lamborghini.
Yeah.
The ultimate grudge match. The history of Lamborghini is long, illustrious, colorful, lots of bankruptcy, intrigue,
and some pretty cool
misappropriated
cars.
funds, but universally outrageous automobiles. Outrageous for different reasons. Some are outrageous because they're offensive that they exist and are built on Audi Q7 platforms. Others are actually
you went straight
outrageous.
for Urus.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, the thing is stupid.
Here, I was going to think that this is a company that exists to be outrageous, but it was founded by someone who didn't want it to be and left because he was very unhappy about that, or possibly because he was losing all of his money, or we don't know. But he was definitely not happy with the way the company went. So,
so this is a history of Lamborghini. We should also mention that Samsung TV something, channel 1194, Haggerty content all the time.
24 hours a day. If you tune into Samsung TV channel 1194, you will see some sort of Haggerty content, which could be the Carmudgeon Show. It could be Icons, Revelations, or Ultimate Drag Race Replay, or any of the amazing, wonderful shows done by the rest of our crew, such as Barn Find Hunter, or Redline Rebuild, or Henry Catchpole's show, or Larry Chen's show. There's cool shit on there, and it's just live in the background. So you should just have it running in the background, ranking up ad revenue for us so I can get my bosses. That's not how I don't get any of it. Don't do it.
Well, yeah, that's why you said your boss.
Yeah, exactly. However, if you want to support this, you can not only just turn on your TV, you might consider joining the Haggerty Drivers Club, which includes unlimited flat bet does for all of your classic cars, access to our award-winning magazine, and unlimited access to our valuation tools, as well as special events and coupons on some of your favorite shit. There's some good stuff in there. But in the meantime, you should just listen to the music, watch him clap, and we'll be right back. Have you nothing to say? All right, I'm going to do something really dangerous. This was in the refrigerator, and it says Starbucks Triple Shot Energy Extra Strength Cafe Mocha flavored with other natural flavors, 225 milligrams of caffeine.
Well, you did say you slept 9 hours a night for the last 3 nights, so I suppose no time like the present to break that.
To wind up in the emergency room with coronary
very
infarct.
much not sleeping.
Whoa. Wow. Oh, that's okay. That would explain it. Yes. The first ingredient is death.
Huh.
A surge of caffeine from Starbucks coffee with a shot of mocha flavor. We are not sponsored by Starbucks. That's fine.
No.
It's complete.
But Samsung TV. Samsung TV channel 1194 Haggerty content.
I figured, should we just have that playing in the background, or that?
No, it's very distracting. We tried it. It was.
You think people are?
It's distracting to me.
Oh,
I'm one of those people who, when I watch TV, I can't do anything else.
Yeah,
I just am completely in the zone, and it'll just be a super boring episode.
Yeah, I think the idea of having TV in the background, quote unquote, for noise, is something I just never understood.
Yeah, me too.
What do you mean for noise? Yeah, I'm sitting on I'm sitting on a couch with dimmed lights, intently focusing on everything, and if anyone in the room asks me a question, it's like, pause. Yes. What was that? Like, yes. I am a single function.
Yeah.
Like,
I've heard this is a thing about men, is that they're much less good at multitasking than women. Yeah. And I certainly feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm pretty poor at it.
I'm terrible at it. But my sister used to always, I would think I would be able to get away with doing something in like the other room while she was watching TV. Bitch fucking heard everything, especially when I was spoiling her kids rotten. Like, I'd be like, here, you can have this. Like, you don't tell mom. What was that? And like, shit, pay attention to your thing. I am. Oh my God, did you see he just got killed? Like, she's talking like, yeah, she does multitask really well. Now, you get her to try to focus on one thing and it doesn't happen. You're like, hey, 2 + 2, bird. But anyway,
that's not the topics of this episode. This episode, we're going to discuss the history of Lamborghini, I think, right?
Automobili Lamborghini.
Right, as opposed to Lamborghini Bruciatori or Lamborghini Trattori.
What's Bruciatori?
Bruciare is to burn. Burners. Heating and air conditioning equipment.
Oh, I think you meant like a phone that you didn't show your spouse that you had like Tinder on or whatever. Got him. Early in the episode, I blame Starbucks triple shot energy.
Okay. You sound like a what is the word? Onophile.
College.
Oh,
I sound like college. You know that sound, right?
Yes, of course. But it's also the noise that professional wine tasters. We still haven't started this episode. We're still on the sidebar.
Wine tasters take bong rips.
No, they do that with wine so they can aerate it in their mouths to experience the flavor more fully. It's part of this. Up. I mean, I don't know fuck about shit about this is for wine, but certainly I know that's what they do.
Can you just put that on loop, Jake? I don't know fuck about shit. I don't know fuck about.
It's supposed to be shit about fuck.
I don't know shit about fuck.
I mean, I don't know fuck about shit. I don't know fuck about shit.
Anyway, so we're going to talk about the automobili.
Automobili.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm doing this. You're going to teach them how to pronounce automobili.
Yes.
Yep.
So it was the result. Everyone knows the story about Ferruccio Lamborghini starting his own car company after being snubbed by Enzo Ferrari.
Snubbed because apparently the clutch kept giving out on his Ferrari. And
he was having issues with it slipping.
And Enzo told him to go fuck himself and learn how to drive.
Yes. He said, you're a tractor man. You don't know how to drive. You will never be able to properly drive a Ferrari or something like that.
Which might have been true. However, the story goes.
So the car was a 250 GTE. And I learned recently that before that he had a 250 SWB, which is very cool and a lot
as opposed
cooler.
to SWV, which would have sounded better.
What?
Sisters with Voices.
Oh, okay.
How do you not know who SWV is? Okay,
because I'm not. Classic. I'm not classic.
I'm
yet.
more like antique at this point, but okay.
Or we could use the word antediluvian again. Two episodes in a row.
Don't do that.
Okay, so
overload the servers on dictionary.com.
So Ferruccio Lamborghini.
But apparently, by the way, that clutch was the same clutch that he used
in a tractor. Correct.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
So he got started he was in the infantry during World War II and was in the island of Rhodes and worked on the commanding officer or whatever, someone important, Alfa Romeo 6C 1750, I think it was, and caused a brake failure that caused him to go into the Adriatic, I think.
Oh, he wrecked. Oh!
Anyway, he was always tinkering and working on stuff. And after the war, he was buying military surplus stuff and making tractors out of it and generally sort of mobilizing Italy after World War II. And so he started making tractors, light tractors, and had a tractor factory. And then he started making heating and air conditioning equipment, hence Bruciatori. And he was a wealthy industrialist who, like all good Italian wealthy industrialists, purchased a Ferrari, and that's where he, started with his whole Ferrari run-in, and it was...
But not a race car driver.
No. He did motorsports in, I think it was a Fiat 1100, or maybe it was a Topolino, and I think he might have been racing in the Mille Miglia, and had an unscheduled stop in a restaurant in it by driving through the wall of that restaurant.
I was hungry.
Yeah, so he decided he wasn't maybe cut out for motorsport. But was a fast car enthusiast. And I think he drove his cars swiftly, just maybe not race pace or in race contexts. So he started his own car company using the pieces of the Palace Revolt. So there was this famous Palace Revolt that happened, oh God, I can't remember what year it was, probably 61 or 62 at Ferrari. And a lot of the really important engineers who were responsible for some of the heavy-duty stuff that was happening then, both motorsports and road cars, like the SWB and the GTO, left Ferrari all around the same time, and various of them started companies doing things, making cars, designing, engineering consultancy, and Lamborghini hired a number of them, including Giotto Bizzarini. And Giotto Bizzarini was tasked by Mr. Lamborghini for designing a engine that was better than Ferrari's, and Ferrari had a V12 that was a single overhead cam design. And Giotto Bizzarini, having come from Ferrari, designed like a 10,000 RPM quad cam V12, and Ferruccio was like...
Which blew away the power requirements. Didn't he want like 300 horsepower and it wound up with like 4 something?
Yes, it really overachieved, but it did so at like 9,500 RPM or something like that. And Ferruccio Lamborghini had specifically told him it was a road car engine and not to go wild, and he did exactly that.
Well, let's remember also, I think it's important to point out, every one of the people involved in early Lamborghini, other than Ferruccio, was a fetus. I mean, they were all under the age of 26, 25,
27, I think, yeah.
And so,
27 is when the Miura came out.
Right.
Yes, sorry. So they were younger.
Younger
still.
than that. They were kids. And so
Yeah,
you give,
Stanzani and Marcello Gandini was young, although he was not yet involved because that was not until after Turin in '65 that he got involved.
But it's important when you say a road car engine. I think
Paolo
it's
also,
it's important to point out that that Lamborghini did not want to build a race car. That was never and it wasn't really even a sports car. It was a GT. It was,
he wanted a Playboy Businessman's Express high quality fast touring car.
Right. So while the idea of a 9,500 RPM V12 sounds perfectly on brand with Lamborghini today, the great irony is that Lamborghini started out to make anything but all of the cars that Lamborghini makes today.
Yes, it was more like a Italian Aston Martin, I think, if you had to characterize it. But sophisticated, more sophisticated technically. These cars had independent rear suspension. They had a quad cam engine where Ferraris were only 2 cams, one per bank. They had limited slip, I think, by default, and 5-speed transmissions also, while Ferrari was still using 4 speeds.
But and the big one was live axle, right? I mean,
yes, independent rear suspension, exactly, in the 350. So the concept came out in '63, and they were making 350 GTs, which is, this sort of elegant adult type of car.
Elegant except for the styling, I would say.
I think it's
they're cool
attractive.
looking. They're cool looking, but they're bizarre.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
unconventional.
nothing to do with Bizarrini. They're just
Bizarro.
Bizarro.
Yeah, I guess it's an acquired taste. I like them, but I see what you're saying. It's not a car
conventionally
where you
beautiful.
Immediately look at it and say spectacular.
In the way that Ferraris were, which of course Ferrari was all their cars were designed by Pininfarina.
At that point, yes.
Right. So you were looking at a design house that put bodies on these.
But the Lamborghini was done by Touring of Milan. They weren't exactly strangers to making good looking stuff.
Okay.
So that was they were front engined, conventional comparatively, but technically sophisticated cars. And then, he gave the team some license to make something that they wanted to make. And of course, they came up with the chassis of the Miura, which was not at all consistent with what Ferruccio Lamborghini had envisioned.
It was literally everything he didn't want, right? I mean,
Yes.
This was an ultra lightweight mid-engine. The idea was, so remember that all of the kids came from racing. Right, so they were, and the Ferrari's racing program, right? Ferrari didn't really care about the street cars, right? This we know. But so you got to think they came out. So Bizzarini makes this engine that Ferruccio fired him early on, right? Because they were in disputes about this engine. And so who wound up redoing the engine? Somebody.
I don't know.
Doesn't that engine have a different name?
No, it was always called the
it was
Bizzarini V12.
Yeah, somebody else went. It was I don't remember who it was. I'm going to misspeak. But one of the guys sort of reworked the engine and detuned it to make it work, at normal RPM ranges. But you have a bunch of young engineers who were really interested in race cars and are making the 350 and 400, which were very much old man-y kind of sophisticated old dude cars.
The sort of ultimate development of the old formula,
right?
Effectively.
And so what they wanted was to move to mid-engine, which they knew Ferrari wasn't willing to do back in the day
For street cars.
For street cars, and everything in racing was going mid-engine. So they conceived of this idea of making a mid-engine car and had no body on it, but literally just turned the V12 sideways and shoved it in this Swiss cheesed chassis that had no structural rigidity at all.
Yeah. And that whole, the sideways engine thing, of course, came from Alec Isagones, who had this car debuts publicly without a body. It's just a rolling chassis with an engine in it. In Turin in 1965, and the Mini had come out in 1959, designed by Alec Isagones, and that car invented the transverse layout that we now use universally in all Econoboxes, pretty much.
Almost, yeah.
And that is the transverse engine powering the front wheels with a transmission sort of next to or behind or under. Right? Yeah, transaxle. The engine for layout reasons. And previously, small cars had all manner of different arrangements. You would have the deux chevaux where the engine was in the front but longitudinal, and then the transmission behind it, which is like the sort of Audi layout. Or you would make rear-wheel drive small cars as well.
Or rear-engine small cars.
Or rear-engined, which is, of course, the Beetle. And so there wasn't a universal use of that formula. And the Mini definitely pioneered it, and then it didn't really start to catch on with others until late 60s, early 70s. The Fiat 127, I think it was. And then, of course, by the Golf, it's kind of de rigueur at that point. So it took, 10, 15 years for that to catch on. Was what?
1974.
Yes.
Golf.
So exactly 15 years after the Mini came out. So they had seen this sort of packaging miracle and said, oh, that works quite nicely for a mid-engine arrangement too. You just turn that around sort of a little bit backwards, more or less. Mid-engine, technically.
You just move it to the back. You don't even have to turn it around. The car would go backwards. That's the thing. Everyone always says, oh, turn it around and put it in the back. No. Pick it up, put it in the back, put it down.
Well, if it had been rear-engined, then you would have had to do a little more than just...
Rear-engine, yeah.
Yes.
But a mid-engine, that's the beauty of a mid-engine car. The engine's sort of on... transverse cars, the engine's sort of on top of the transaxle. You pick it up, move it to the back, done. No changes even to the transmission.
So yes, you have this chassis, which is wild looking. You have this transverse mid-engine V12 layout, which is very innovative and also incredibly compact. I mean, if you ever look at a Miura from the outside in profile, the distance between the back of the door and the front of the wheel arch is shocking when you imagine that there's a V12 in there somewhere, as contrasts with longitudinal V12 cars like Testarossas and Countaches, where there's a big kind of gap that the stylists have to sort of visually solve between where the driver sits and where the rear wheels are. And the chassis also has independent double wishbones all around, and an inclined radiator, and just it's very, very wild. It looks like a race car. Everyone assumes Lamborghini has gone against his claim of not making a race car because it is so outrageous that how could that not be a race car?
And I think that Ferruccio allowed the kids to play to get more attention on the other cars, right? He had no
trusted
intention of
them and knew they were talented, and he did not intend for this to be a production car.
No, and I think he did it begrudgingly. I think it was just a fine, okay, go do your thing. If it gets people to the show stand and force or attracts them over in order for them to place orders for the 400.
Yes,
350.
Exactly. And as a way to sort of undermine Ferrari or to upstage them effectively.
But man, did that fucking backfire.
Yeah, so then everyone saw the chassis and they were like, holy shit. And so then this is now November of 65 at Turin, and they went to a number of styling houses, including Touring of Milan, who had just done their other cars, their front-engine cars. And they made a proposal, and Bertone also made a proposal, and that was the one that ended up winning. It was designed predominantly by Marcello Gandini, with also some input by, would it have been Giugiaro? Who else was there?
Giugiaro.
No, Nuccio Bertone.
Bertone. Well, hold on. I don't think that...
Gandini is now generally considered to be
but I think Giugiaro was there also. Yeah. The crazy thing is, it was, if I remember correctly, when I did I probably should have gone through my notes on the Miura video before we decided to do this. But if I remember correctly, it was Gandini's second day on the job at Bertone, where they're like, hey, look at this. Why don't you start sketching something? And he sketched the whole car within a couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, the whole car was displayed with a built version of the body in March.
Yeah.
And so the car is displayed for the first time in November publicly, and then there's a car with a body on it the following March. I mean, it's insane. What is that, 4 months or something obscene like that? And then the reaction once the car had a body on it at Geneva in 66 was so strong that it went from sort of a concept to like, we'll build it.
Yeah.
And the development and engineering of the car wasn't really done at that point, but they were like, we're going to get this in production. And they did. I mean, the first cars were built in 66, late 66, I think. Yeah. So the early Miuras were not that well developed for that reason.
There were huge structural problems with them, right? So
yes, they thickened the gauge of the steel that the chassis was made out of relatively early in production, within the first, I don't know, probably 50 cars.
But they also had to recall a bunch of the cars. And so customers would come in.
Yes,
I love all these.
Right. We've talked about this.
Yeah. Where the customer would come in and Ferruccio would take them to dinner, and it was all prearranged. It was a restaurant that knew him, and they would sort of extend the dinner as long as they possibly could.
Get them comprehensively
smashed.
Yes.
They would have hookers and booze basically there to sort of distract them while the team was like deconstructing the Miuras and then literally welding in new box sections of frame because the cars just weren't strong enough, designed as they were as a rolling chassis that was never supposed to go into production. Pretty wild stuff for a guy that never wanted to build a car in the first place, but said, okay, well, no one's buying my GT, so I guess if...
Well, and the amount of attention it attracts, and it immediately catapulted. I mean, that was the car that made... Lamborghini was sort of a sidebar company or a sort of also ran that was known maybe among motoring connoisseurs, but didn't have a lot of mainstream recognition until the Miura appeared. And there were crowds that were, X people deep. And the car, one of the first cars, Bob Wallace, the Kiwi development engineer, drove the car to Monaco and parked it in front of the casino there, which is the place to be seen in Europe if you're into conspicuous consumption. And the crowd was like 10 deep around the car because they were just like, holy shit, what is this thing? It was truly a spaceship, and it made Ferraris look old-fashioned overnight, which was exactly what Ferruccio was after. Right. And that, of course, gave him exactly what the motivation or the outcome he was looking for in starting this company. And it should be said, this is 1966, 3 years after starting the company.
Right. So, I mean, but the great irony was he wanted to take sales away from Ferrari and piss Enzo off. Like this was a grudge match. The whole company was a grudge match, but it was never supposed to be in that way, right? The Miura was only there to get attention to sell the GT cars, which it didn't sell. The only thing it was selling was the fucking Miura. And they had to start engineering the car under this body that Gandini had designed in 2 seconds. And you have a bunch of these 25-year-olds running amok, which is amazing to me. It's amazing that any of it worked.
Yeah. And they made 762, well, that's the official number. Several cars count more than once for tax reasons. I've crashed my car. I need a new one. Great. We'll give you a new one, but it'll have the same serial number.
So you don't have to pay taxes on it.
Yes.
But I just love that grudge match actually created something that Ferruccio didn't want. And let's be very clear about one thing.
Well, it did what he wanted it to do. It just didn't do it in the way he
wanted it to do.
Yes.
And let's be also, Miura enters production in 66.
Yeah.
6. Within 9 years, Ferruccio has sold the company and moved on.
Yeah, it was completely out by 74. He started selling shares, I think, at 72.
So only less than that. So think about this in terms of Tesla, for example. Elon has now been at Tesla, and Tesla has been in existence for far longer than Ferruccio ever was with Lamborghini. And that's the thing is we think, these titans, these names like Ferruccio, Lamborghini, Enzo Ferrari. He was a flash. No offense to him, but he was a flash in the pan who wanted nothing to do with the company that he accidentally created. And I love that.
I mean, it wasn't accidentally created, but I think once the going got kind of gnarly and labor strikes start in Italy, I think 1970 for workers, it was a really what is the word I'm looking for? Unsettled time in Italy. So you have industrial relations issues for sure. You're having sort of had to deal with the realities of customers as well.
But was that actually Lamborghini's problem? From his perspective?
At the factory, it was problematic. It was starting to become so unpleasant that he was like, this was supposed to be fun, and it's not fun anymore. I've got labor issues. And
they also couldn't build the cars that he wanted to build. That was the thing, is he didn't want to build the fucking Miura.
Well, yeah, and so the time that he's there, you see the products really reflect his original vision. There's all of this whole line of cars, a lineage of cars that no longer exists because they realized they weren't selling. And so after he left, that line effectively died. I mean, when was the last front-engine Lamborghini besides the LM002? It would have been the Espada in 1976, which is when it ended production. Right. But he had this long series of cars that reflected his vision of what he thought Lamborghini should be. The Espada, the Jarama, the Islero, the Urraco was mid-engined. The 400 GT and the 350 GT, all of these front-engined cars, which were part of his original vision, that then as soon as he was gone, they sort of put them out to pasture, realizing that the sizzle in the market actually lay with the Miura,
outrageous stuff.
The crazy stuff, which would be the Miura, and then it was, how do you out Miura the Miura? It's the Countach.
It's the only way to do that. Right?
Yeah. So that arrived in 1971 in concept form. I think it entered production in 74. Mm-hmm. And then the mid-engined baby car, which was the Urraco,
which was meant to be as a Porsche 911 competitor, effectively.
Yeah, or the Ferrari 308 or Ferrari Dino competitor.
Which looked far. I mean, the crazy thing is, what the Urraco did.
I think it's a more coherent design.
Well, the same car, right?
Yes.
And you saw that which car did we just saw a. I just sent you a link to a photo of a prototype
for the 308.
The 308 that was done by. No, hold on. Yeah, it was a 308 prototype.
It's
that
a
looks
three-way
more like a
prototype
Urraco
that
than,
looks like a Urraco.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, they were born from the same sketch.
Yes,
But-
and they were both done by Gandini.
Right.
at
And
Bertone.
Gandini actually considers the 308 his car, but does not consider the Miura his, which is interesting because Gandini based on what he said, he's much more into packaging and engineering solutions than he is just styling. And the Miura was just a styling exercise on top of a package that had
someone
already
else
been created.
did.
And so he doesn't
Admittedly cleverly.
it must have been to be able to make a car that looks like that. But at the end of the day, it's so funny that what we widely regard as the most beautiful car ever made, beautiful sports car ever made, the designer of it is like, not really mine. How about you look at the 308? And everyone's like, oh, like it's just like not.
Well, and of course he did the Countach as well.
Right, that he claimed on his own, and that was
yes.
another packaging
Innovation.
Innovation. That's a great word
Yes.
to use because
It's a wild format,
Yeah.
although it has been used by every subsequent mid-engined Lamborghini V12.
there,
Yeah.
with the transmission on front.
Yeah. Isn't
They're
that
all that
true?
way? I don't know.
think so. And it is also used, I believe, by the Veyron. I once investigated this because I said, what mid-engine cars? Normally when you do a longitudinal mid-engine arrangement, the engine is mounted backwards with the, back of the crankshaft pointing to the transmission, which is behind the engine, between the rear wheels.
Right.
The Lamborghini approach is the opposite, which is that the engine is mounted forwards. Well, actually, no. Sorry. I said backwards, I meant forwards, with the crankshaft coming out of the back of the engine. So that's the normal way, and then you mount the transmission to the back of the transmission, the engine to the back of the transmission. This is what you would see in a Ferrari F50, in a 355, in every, non-transverse Ferrari mid-engine car. The Countach and its descendants, the transmission is in front of the engine, kind of between the seats, and then there is a drive shaft that runs towards the back of the car.
Everyone else has done some sort of weird arrangement. EB110, which is very closely related to Lamborghini in a lot of ways because it's a lot of the same players. That was actually a longitudinal V12 offset to the driver's side where the transmission was next to it. But everyone was just trying to figure this shit out.
And then you look at the McLaren F1 approach, which is the engine is longitudinal and the transmission is transverse.
Well, that's exactly what. So Ferrari called when they went to longitudinal engines on the 348 so they're
And the Mondial
T.
Yes.
Transverse. That's the fucked up thing. They went from a transverse engine 308, 328 and Mondial to a longitudinal 348 and Mondial T, where T stood for transversale. Transverse for the transmission, which is so fucked up. Only the Italians would do that. Well, we're going to get rid of the transverse engine, make it longitudinal, and call the car transverse. Fuck everyone. Yeah, but I mean that's kind of the way that's one of the best ways to do it. Is to get
from packaging efficiency. That is the way to do it, and that's why the McLaren F1 ended up like that. And it's a reflection of the ethos behind the whole car, because every single decision in that car is oriented towards no compromises, or the least compromised solution. I guess you call it.
Countach was Gandini's own, right? Gandini claims that as his own because from start to finish he was involved in the packaging and the chassis design and everything else,
as opposed to just skinning it.
Yeah, but by the time that car went into production, Ferruccio was ciao.
Yes, he was done by 74 because it stopped being fun for him. He retired and bought a winery, a vineyard, and was making wine for the rest of his life.
Well, he tried to make another car. I bet you don't know that.
Yes.
He 10 years later, so it was 85, I think he started chats with Paolo Stanzani, again, same crew, right? To start making another supercar. And it was because of the Group B stuff. He just thought, well, we should make a road car that can outperform all the crazy Group B stuff. Let's just have some fun with this. And they realized they needed financing.
And exotic. You're talking about all the homologation Group B cars like Audi Sport Quattros and Peugeot Turbo 16s. And
right. He thought Italy was not making anything fantastic, and he should make a hypercar, but he needed funding. And crazy enough, that came in the form of Romano Artioli.
Oh, should we fill in the gap of what happened to Lamborghini between when to finish the 70s out and get into the early 80s?
Yeah, I'm just talking about Ferruccio. So what happened with Ferruccio is he left, created a vineyard, then 10 years later was like, fuck. His name is on cars that Lamborghini was going out of business. We'll go back to that in a second. But he just tried to make a new car. That became the Bugatti EB110, which almost was going to be called before when he was involved. He couldn't use the word Lamborghini, so it was going to be called a new car called the Ferruccio or the Furla. For Ferruccio Lamborghini. Can you imagine
it sounds
the
like
Furla V12 LP longitudinale posteriore trasversale babri bubri autovu? I don't know. I mean, whatever.
That definitely would.
Can you imagine Furla
Yeah, it sounds like a manufacturer of window coverings
or tractors? I drive my Furla. I'm using my Furla 12,000 for my cornfields. Anyway. I found it interesting that Ferruccio actually thought about getting back involved in it, but was unwilling to risk any of his own money, probably having learned the lesson that he learned in the 70s, which you're going to teach us about right now. And I'm not having any more of this because fuck this.
You're already going 140 miles an hour. Okay, so that was very Madeline Kahn of you. No one will know what I'm talking about.
Just go watch the scene where she has sex with Frankenstein in the movie Young Frankenstein. Oh, sweet mystery of life, I found you.
Yet another sidebar. Right. So who took over Lamborghini in the 1970s? This would have been initially a pair of Swiss businessmen named Jean-Claude
Gauthier?
Limer. And Rossetti. Sorry, Rossetti and Limer were the two Swiss guys. And they had a fairly hands-off approach, which obviously didn't serve them too well. And so then by the late 70s come around, and there's a commercial director. Is he commercial director? Baraldini was what role?
Yeah, he was one of the... I don't remember what it was his job basically to look for partnerships, because there were multiple problems, but one of the major one was Lamborghini was so often skirting with bankruptcy that they weren't paying their bills, and suppliers were refusing to sell them parts. Mm-hmm. Between that and the labor shortages and all the unrest and strikes, they were having a hard time building even the Countach, which had a huge wait list. Everyone wanted it. So they needed something to keep the factories humming along and some sort of other source of revenue. And the first thing that Baraldini did was bring in Fiat Rustica. Do you know anything about this car?
Only what I have learned from your video.
Oh, okay. Rustica was like a Fiat that they converted to, that Lamborghini bought from Fiat Brazil, I think, and brought them into the factory and converted them to like basically Dakar / Storado spec, raised them and before driving them.
Panda 4x4 before the Panda.
You can say 4x4. You're in America now.
Chocolate with Johnny Depp.
Right.
Yeah, something of the sort. And they did that. They made 5,000 of those to keep the factory business. And then Baraldini found two big opportunities. One of them was to work as an engineering consultant for BMW and to make the first motorsport car, the M1. Mm-hmm. And then the other one was to build an off-road vehicle for sale to the U.S. government that was originally called the FMC XR311, renamed Lamborghini Cheetah once they basically told the guys who created the company for FMC to run and steal their intellectual property and then have Lamborghini build it instead. That whole project ultimately became the Lamborghini LM02. So I've done Revelations videos on both of those cars. Both the backstories are amazing, and I would have loved to do both of the cars at the same time, but I couldn't get an LM02 when I had an M1. But those cars are basically
intertwined,
first cousins.
Yeah.
And actually,
can't you tell by looking at them?
Right. No. Also interesting, it was Baraldini who actually is the one that introduced. So he left Ferrari. Baraldini left Lamborghini, so many vowels, when he realized that Lamborghini, basically everyone had been cooking the books, and there was no way that Lamborghini could actually do the M1 project and the LM02 project at the same time. When he realized that they had taken the money from the Italian government and from BMW that was earmarked for M1 development and used it to develop what became the LM02. So he's like, fuck this, I'm out. As the guy who had sold both of those things out of shame,
to the
sort of
partners.
needed to leave. Yep. And then he went to work for Romano Artioli, which is how he wound up introducing Artioli to Ferruccio and company to then make the Bugatti EB110. So the Bugatti EB110 is also a first cousin of the LM02 and the BMW M1, which is it's such a
Very
small,
incestuous
little
it's
world.
just like the same number of people, same
It's
people.
the same 6 fucking people all the way through. I mean, if you look at all of the Bugatti EB110 test drivers, it's Loris Bacocchi. I mean, he was at Lamborghini for years. It's all the same guys. So anyway, all right.
So Lamborghini enters bankruptcy probably in, I don't know, 77, 78 and ends up in receivership. And the managers that end up controlling Lamborghini from that point are a pair of French brothers, Patrick Mimron, and I forget what his brother's name is.
But yeah, Patrick became CEO.
Yes.
He was 24.
24. Yes.
This is another theme I love about Lamborghini, like the company that's run by Chilens.
Well, and you look at the cars, and it's sort of, they look like teenage dream cars for that reason, because they were effectively. And so they are managing the company as it comes out of receivership, and their family was very wealthy, and eventually I think within a few months they had actually just bought the whole company. And so they ran the company, with reasonable competence, and sort of reinvigorated the brand and came out with subsequent developments of the Countach, which are the ones that we now sort of really closely associate with the Countach identity, with all the flared cars did come out in 78, but they just developed a 5-liter version, which was actually 4.8 liters of that same engine, and then the 4-valve version of it also, and basically saw Lamborghini succeed in a way that it hadn't in a while during the 1980s, taking advantage of the sort of craze for supercars during that period.
I'm not sure it ever made a profit.
Yeah, perhaps not, but it certainly was making more cars during that period. And they started developing the Diablo in that period. And it was actually fairly far along when Chrysler bought
I didn't know that.
the company.
That's
Yes.
cool. I thought Diablo started under Chrysler.
No, it restarted.
No shit.
So they had, I think they were a few weeks away. They had just had a party to celebrate the first moving under its own power of the prototype Diablo when Chrysler bought the company, and they looked at it and they're like, this isn't good enough. It's not fast enough, and it's not kind of nice enough. And so so once Chrysler came in 1987 and bought the company, the Diablo, which was supposed to come out sort of imminently, got delayed ultimately until January of 1990 because they were redeveloping the car. They restyled it inside and out, completely new interior, and reduced the drag a bunch. And I think they improved the performance markedly because they wanted the car to aim higher effectively. And so the styling, while the concept for that car was done by Gandini, it sort of got, in his eyes, bastardized, which is a strange thing to say about the Diablo because I think most people are pretty keen on it. But it looks quite different from what he expected it to look like and what he initially envisaged. Which, something that more closely resembles what he envisaged is what ended up the Chisetta Marauder. And so
Another first cousin.
yes, another, it's all
Trying
a lot
desperately
of
to get
Appalachia going on
trying
here.
to get trying desperately to get a V16T here for Revelations because that's
a story that also needs to be told.
Also with the same Lamborghini people, same
and it was a pair of Lamborghini engines joined together that powered it. Also,
I thought that, and I just
it a
read
pair of
something.
Urraco engines?
That's what the common lore is, but I just read something that it wasn't. It was in one of the books that when I was doing
is it a
EB110 research.
90-degree V16? I don't know. We'll find
got-
out.
we're gonna
You'll
find
find
out.
You'll
Yeah.
learn us that. So comprehensively redeveloped, delayed several years, but the Diablo finally arrives in 1990, and it's a 200+ mile an hour car where the Countach's C sub Z, the coefficient of drag was I think 0.41 or something absurd like that, like much worse than a Citroen DS, for example, which came out
Much
in
worse than
1955.
a Chevy Impala at that point.
Yeah. So those cars were not that good at top end, even though they had a lot of power. They were accelerative, but by the time you were in the regime where drag started to become an issue, those cars weren't that fast. And of course, meanwhile, Ferrari comes out with the F40 and Porsche the 959. A lot of technical advancement had happened, and the Countach design was coming on 15 years old. So the Diablo really needed to break 200 miles an hour, which it did, and it set a lot of performance benchmarks and was genuinely like a proper Lamborghini. Apparently, Ferruccio Lamborghini was shown one before they went in production and blessed it as a real Lamborghini.
What else was he going to do?
Yeah,
He had nothing to do with the company.
Yeah.
Like, get my name off of that. Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
You gave that right up 20 years earlier.
Yeah, we own it now. So yeah, the Diablo comes out, and that sort of characterizes Lamborghini for the 90s. And the car was designed from the outset to be able to be 4-wheel drive, even though the first Diablos were not 4-wheel drive. But those cars, definitely defined the 90s for Lamborghini. And then Chrysler was like, oh, this is not going very well. We're losing a lot of money. And so they were out for 5-6 years. I think it was 93-ish or something like that. And it got taken over by some Indonesian relatives of the royal family, part of the royal family of Indonesia. And it sort of got passed around for a little bit in that sort of space until Audi, via Pierre, bought the company in 1998.
To everyone's surprise. Like, what the hell was Volkswagen doing buying Lamborghini?
Yeah, but it was around the time that they Bugatti'd themselves also.
Yeah.
And so it was part of this vision, which we will talk about now we have formally presaged this in the last two episodes ago, that the Piekasode is coming. So we'll talk about.
I mean, the Piekasode that Icons episode could wind up being 3 hours long, but we don't have budget, so I'm sure we'll
whatever doesn't fit in the Icons episode, we will put in a Carmudgeon episode
for sure. Because and already I can tell you, I have my notes alone on just Piek and the sort of high level stuff. On the cars and timing is 40 pages. And
Holy hell.
Yeah. And I haven't gotten into Phaeton research or deep dive research on any of the cars. I can't. We're not, the cars are just going to be bit players as a sort of background stage on what was happening at the time, because you can't review 15 unbelievable accomplishments and cover 70 years of a career.
The icons on the Piek cars might need to be 2 episodes.
I can't do that. We don't have budget for that stuff. There's a reality in which I have to live, and that reality.
Yeah, but if you knock out 2 Icons episodes in one shoot, then you can double the budget. Just saying, I bet the audience would consume it. If you build it, they will come. I
don't think it's a mass consume. I'm not, put it this way, I'm not doing the Piekasode for view count. I don't think it's going to do particular. I'm now on record as saying I don't think it's going to do particularly well. New car stuff. Icons was actually my way of doing new cars. It was supposed to be a new car review program. There will be one new car in the Piekasode as a hook on, and the reason why we're doing it now. But I got it. There's plenty of other cool shit coming out this year, I hope. Okay. So Audi buys Lamborghini and revolutionizes everything. So I was in the factory a lot in 2009, whenever it was. And you could see the way the Murciélago was built. The Murciélago was built on one line, and the Gallardo was built on another one. By the way, it's pronounced Gallardo, even though Stefan Winkelmann, the CEO of the company, pronounced it Gallardo, which was not allowed because that's an extra syllable. I can almost allow Gallardo because it was in Italian. It would be Gallardo.
Yeah, if you put that word in front of an Italian, they would, and just read it.
They would say Gallardo.
Yes,
right, and a Spaniard would say Gallardo. If Gallardo, but the Murciélago, which is also that's another impossible word to pronounce. That the production line for the Mercy was like a disaster. There were like 6 old guys,
which is interesting because it's still an Audi sort of product.
So what they did, there was so much revolt at the factory when Audi bought it that the Italians and the Germans work really, really well together, except for when they don't. The Germans view the Italians as disorganized and chaotic and all the truths, and then the Italians view the Germans as unnecessarily rigid and structured and
soulless,
which is also true. And so what winds up happening, I feel like through history we have so many examples of times where you have an Italian put in a fence created by a German. So they're like, okay, if we put in this walls and anything that happens inside of the walls is okay. So you can let the Italians bounce off the walls and go crazy and drink a lot of coffee and whatever else, so long as they're boxed in and you get great shit. Bruno Sacco, great example. Like, this is a Mercedes-Benz first and foremost. And even though you're Italian, we need to keep it looking German. Beautiful cars. Same thing with Gallardo. Gallardo is a stunningly beautiful, simple design, also German and Italian, right? But when an Audi announced that it was buying Lamborghini, a lot of the factory members quit. And so as soon as the Germans showed up in their white lab coats, all the old guys were out. This is what was explained to me at the time. And so the Mercy line was the only people who were left in the Lamborghini factory, and everyone had a cigarette. Everyone had 2 like cups of coffee on them at all times. This is an exaggeration, but that assembly line was, my guess, average age was in the 50s. Don't sneeze.
Okay,
You're on camera.
I won't.
Okay.
I almost did.
That's incredible that I could just say, don't do it, and you stop. It's going to come like surprise and splatter me. But that production line was a complete disaster zone. It was filthy. There was shit everywhere. There were wires hanging all over the place. You look at the cars and they were like, the wiring harnesses were not loomed, and there was just, it was spaghetti all over, parts all over the place, complete shit show. And you'd walk 40 feet in the other direction, and the Gallardo production line was 100% German, spotless from the floors to the machinery to everything involved. You know, the harnesses were positive click in, everything was just German. And the average age of the guy on the line couldn't have been more than like 26 or 27. It was really interesting to see. So the old guys were still building Murciélagos, banging shit. You heard hammers, shit breaking over on that other side of the factory. And on the Gallardo side, it would be like something would fit in, and you just take a ratchet and amazing difference. Aventador, I have not been to the factory since Aventador, but I suspect Aventador is built
It's
very
built
much
in an orderly way. Now it looks like a modern factory.
right.
I toured in 2018 and 2013 also.
I mean, Aventador feels like an Audi.
Yeah, in terms of the construction, and except for the upholstery shop. The upholstery shop was a little bit chaotic.
Amazing.
It was funny. It was all women except for there was 2 men, and you know, they're all doing brightly colored stuff. It was a very wild experience.
Yeah. That's sort of the only really Italian thing left in that factory to me. You know, if I ignore Murciélago, it was the upholstery shop. But they were that's what you want, right? You want the bits that you see and interact with to be Italian, and then all the mechanicals to be German, and then you want the cafeteria to be Italian food, and that Lamborghini does really well. Yeah, the pizzas are amazing. But yeah, and so now we have this company that is basically a derivative or a division of Audi, and
what's also surprising to see there, and I don't know how long this has been true, but they don't build or they don't paint the bodies in-house at Lamborghini.
Neckarsulm in Germany.
Well, it depends on which car, but they get painted by another Italian company that's not that far away called Carrozzeria Imperiale.
Imperial chassis.
Yeah, coachwork, basically. And so the shells that were going onto the production line would come in these big trucks.
Was that for Aventador?
It was true for Aventador. It might have been true for the... Huracan. This is for paintwork only, I think. Yeah. For the Huracan as well. Which was
Gallardo at the day, they arrived fully painted from the Audi plant.
From the R8 plant.
Yeah, which was the same car. It was wild. It was just big, Audi logos on everything. And, I have a little bit of a fundamental problem with that, but I think the car differentiated itself from the Audi R8 enough that the first gen, I don't think Huracan and current R8 are differentiated enough. Certainly not in price. I mean, that R8 is now dead, but I think I was there when they launched the Mission, or they launched the second gen, and everyone in the room was quite not nice to the old men sitting in front of us giving the presentation, when they're like, all right, we've dropped the manual, we dropped the V8, it's V10 only, and it's $230,000. We were all like, the fuck? Why the fuck would you buy this car over the Lamborghini?
Because the Lamborghini is $330.
Yeah, but most people who have that kind of money have that kind of money, and so we were proven right. I don't think the second gen R8 sold particularly well. And as per usual, Audi's chassis tuning left a little to be desired. And by that, I mean, it was a handling nightmare. But the powertrain was unbelievable. And now today we have the Urus, which is...
I thought we were going to get through this whole episode without talking about the Urus.
Which is such a shame.
Great. Yep.
Such a shame. It's not what that company needs to be building. Put it that way. But there's also...
Well, it prints money.
Yeah.
Why would you not?
I guess. I just wonder if that would have happened under Pierre.
What I think they should have done is they should have done what Mercedes has done with the Geländewagen, which is to go revisit. You have this incredible heritage in the form of an LMO2, such an iconic, like brash, all of the things that make consumers go wild in the marketplace. Right. And so rather than grafting supercar sort of language onto a Q7.
They should have grafted
what
military
they should have
language.
done is gone full Rambo,
yeah.
and it would sell just absolutely spectacularly, because what makes more impact than a giant box.
Well, let's
Going down the road in
yes.
automotive form.
Yeah, I mean,
like a Geländewagen.
Back to the last episode where we talked about designing cars for women, whatever. You design a car for Rambo, and everyone loves it. And so, what are the hottest SUVs in the world? Like, sort of universally, it's Jeeps, G-Wagons, Jeeps, Broncos,
4Runner,
Land
Bush.
Cruiser, everything that's just a box.
Yeah. So I think Lamborghini completely missed the boat on that, and they could do an amazing V12 powered box. Yeah. It's an LMO to redo.
Yeah.
And then it competes with Ferrari's Puro Sangue, which is also V12 powered. Mm-hmm. I think that's just an absolute no-brainer.
It was a complete no-brainer that they missed. I mean,
maybe it's not too late. They could do it at any time.
They really tried to. Apparently, Stefan Winkelmann really wanted to make a wagon. There was that wagon concept that they made. And, oh my God, it's now 12, 13 years ago. And they showed it. They did a bunch of drawings, and I think they actually showed it. And it was stunning. And
it's an Aventador wagon? What is it?
It was it wasn't mid-engined. Mid-engine wagon would be a very strange thing.
You'd basically have a Renault R5 Turbo or a Turbo 16 Peugeot 205.
Rendered Lamborghini. What was that thing called? Ugh. Or was it a sedan? It was a sedan.
Oh, Portofino. Or that was the Chrysler one in the 90s.
This was called Estoque. Do you remember this?
No, the name sounds familiar.
Or Estoque, as opposed to Evoque. Sorry, I'm showing.
Oh yeah, it looks like that whole portfolio of bullshit Lotus things that all came out at the same time.
This one was a thing, and I sat at a dinner with Winkelmann and a whole bunch of journalists many years ago, and he had some people just scribbling notes the whole time, and we all attacked poor Stefan. And you don't do that to him. He's a sort of big, powerful figure. But he asked us all what we thought about the idea of a Urus, and they had just shown a sketch of it. And I think it was Dan Neal.
Yeah, but he was right. He printed money with it.
He didn't. He was out after that. He wanted the Estoque.
Oh.
And Audi, this is the problem with Audi. Like, I'm hard on this company for dynamics and whatever else, but they make fantastic products. The problem with Audi in the US is it's hard to understand how prestigious this brand is in the rest of the world, right? The reaction that I have to Audi is always the New York. This one thinks who he is, right? Audi has this ego that's vastly out of proportion with what we feel like it is. However, if we look at it in terms of brand value outside of the US, it's much closer. And if we look at it in terms of who makes all the money for the Volkswagen Group, well, Audi does have a lot of power, right? Audi takes a lot of
premium products
with a shit ton of profit built into it, right?
Yeah.
Audi stopped the Estoque project because Audi thought it would compete with the A8. Please commence laughing. First of all, the only thing that competes properly with the A8 is the A8 itself, because no one wants a fucking big Audi.
The S-Class, yeah.
Right. Well, the S-Class, it's not a competition.
It pulverizes.
No one, in the same way that no one ever was buying a Volkswagen Phaeton, no one wants a fucking Audi A8. And they've proven this now for 30 years. Not really, it's only 20-something. But right, it's been 20-something years of sales failure after sales failure after sales failure. And the cars have always been good. There's nothing wrong with them at all. In fact, they're quite good. It's just, this is a segment of the market that Audi doesn't occupy. And the fact that Audi thought that a Lamborghini Estoque would shit on the 6 sales of A8s that they made a year was just ludicrous. But if what we were sort of told secretly years ago is all wrong, Winkelmann wanted Estoque, did not want an SUV, did not think it should happen. And in looking back on it, interestingly, a lot of his questions were like, what should a Lamborghini SUV look like? Is it okay if it's just differentiated with a bunch of carbon bits in the center tunnel reinforcing the chassis? And what he was telling us without telling us was that it was going to be a Q7.
Yeah, on the Q7.
And we all said the same thing. Without a V12 in it can, or V10 or V12 naturally aspirated, it can absolutely not have a Lamborghini badge on it, and it must be built in Sant'Agata. Now, I don't really think that that last statement has to be true. I don't really care where it's built. Customers probably would, but if it had
not the customers who buy it, right? You look at the vast undifferentiated masses who buy that car, where they're like, I want it to look like it's from outer space and be an SUV. They're perfectly happy and they don't care.
They don't even know where it's built.
Yes.
Right? In the same way that G-Wagon customers don't know that their G-Wagon isn't built in Stuttgart. It's not actually German. It's Austrian.
Yes.
Same thing with Porsches that are built in Finland. I mean, no one knows. But my point was, and I think every one of us at the table agreed, the engine is the identity. And if it has some shit in corporate turbo V8, you guys are in big trouble. And
the market disagrees.
The market disagrees. I don't think they're selling to the correct customers.
Well, no. Correct customer is a customer who has money or a loan.
That's the problem. Every time there's a downturn, Lamborghini's sales tank and Ferraris don't. So, I mean, we'll see if that holds true for the next forthcoming recession. But yeah, I just think Urus is a misstep. But imagine
if it's
that.
Commercially viable, it's justifiable.
Yeah, but commercially viable. I mean,
that sounds like something that should be said in all boardrooms.
Well, this is the reality of capitalism. Car companies are not in business to make cars. Car companies are in business to make money, and the Urus makes a shit ton of money.
So there you go.
I would say if the Urus looked like a G-Wagon in terms of its form factor and had a V12 in it, they would sell 10 times as many.
Or they would make 10 times as much money because they would be so expensive because it's so incomparable that people would just be like, my G-Wagon's too pedestrian. I need to look like I have real money, not just G-Wagon money.
I mean, that's the joke of the G-Wagon is that the average transaction price for G-Wagon went up every year for the last gen. Every year Mercedes tried to price that thing out of existence. Yeah. They would literally say, we're bumping up 30 grand this year. We got to kill it off because it wasn't passing, any of the crash tests or emissions or anything else.
They were trying to sort of give a commercial justification. Well, sales are down. We can't keep.
Yeah, so they would price it $30K higher, and it would fucking outsell the previous year. And they were like, "Shit." Well, at least Mercedes really did listen to what the market said and said, "Well, okay. Well, if there's price tolerance at this price point, now we can use the money that we made screwing these customers on these cars to develop a new one."
Except for they don't depreciate. So how screwed were they truly?
They weren't really. I mean, they thought they were screwing the customers, but they're really giving the customers exactly what they wanted, which is actually what capitalism should be about.
Yes. And that's what the Lamborghini SUV should do.
Right. I'm very keen to drive the Revuelto, which is
the hell is that?
The Aventador replacement.
Oh.
It's out. We should start to see reviews of it coming soon. I'm curious, still V12, but a hybrid. Still NA. So it's a little bit of a...
It's the new LaFerrari.
I don't think it's
hybrid V12 NA.
Yeah, but I think it's more like, fair enough. I think
that's what I mean.
It's more like, it looks like an Aventador facelift. It really does. But I think it's on brand for Lamborghini, which means Ferruccio would hate it. I mean,
yes, if it were up to him, he would be making Aston Martins.
Who's buying DB13s now? I don't even know. And then, or Bentley, even the Bentley Contis. I guess those are a bit bigger than Lamborghini wanted. But I find Lamborghini so interesting that the company that he created was not what he wanted. It accomplished what he wanted it to do, which was to be a thorn in the side of Enzo Ferrari. But then they both wound up walking away.
Part, to be fair.
Was it? Or was it to make money?
No. I mean, for Ferruccio, the most important part, I don't think it was making money.
Come on. If that weren't the case, he would have started that Furlock company. Like he would have just been like, fuck it. Now I'll just...
Yeah, but it was a different phase in his life. At that phase, he was looking to make a point. He had enough money that he could afford to actually make the point he was trying to make.
I want that. Like, oh my God, could you imagine a world in which we had enough money that all we would do is just grudge matches? Like, imagine, what would you do?
I would buy Lamborghini and make them make the SUV we just described.
Oh, no, I'm talking a much smaller scale. Like, what would you do to that fucking Subaru in the left lane? If your whole life you had no purpose other than to exact revenge on people that were in your way? Oh.
Like the woman who hit your Honda Beat.
Oh. Now, why do you got to go there?
Because immediately the first thing I thought about if I had that kind of money was I would exact revenge. I have a list of about 4 people who was on my permanent shit list. I hope they are all dead. But if they are not, then I would just use money to make their life extremely unpleasant. These are all people who have automotively wronged me. All right, some guy who had a big collection of cars, and I went to see the car, and it was not as represented. It had been accidented and color changed. And I was a kid. I spent all my money on it to buy this car. I flew myself out there. I took one of 10 PTO days I had in a year to go fly to Colorado to buy this damn car. I sent him I think it was $1,000 deposit, and I got there and the car was not as represented. He wouldn't give me my $1,000 back. And I was 24, 25 years old. So like one PTO day and $1,000 meant so much to me. And he had this big building full of cars and he wouldn't give me my $1,000 back. So that guy, he's probably dead. I hope he is. And then there's what?
Let's look him up.
And then there's a few other people who have like hit my cars. And then like one time I approached her and she was like, it's a bumper and it's San Francisco. And then she just was like, what do you? I just
pit maneuver her into a tree.
She was stopped already at that point. Anyway,
you follow her home, and
she was in front of her home. And in any case, if I had that kind of
you're
money,
in front of her home, so you knew where she lived. Oh my god, so much potential for revenge. I mean, you could have picketed in front of you. Could have shot. It's San Francisco. You literally could have shot on her front doorstep.
She wouldn't have known who did it. Where's the value in doing that?
You could sit there and smile at her.
Okay. Well, in any case, there's a short list of people who I hope no longer exist for reasons like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, all that about grudge matches, Lamborghini. End of the episode.
The ultimate grudge match episode. I think that's our thumbnail for this one.
Yes.
Derek's grudge match episode.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting story on Lamborghini. Glad we neither of us did any research before this, but
I think we got fairly interesting considering neither of us knew what we were talking about.
I think we fooled them. I think
they
think we know what we're talking about.
Okay.
Wonderful.
On to the next one.
Join us next week for the next episode of the Fully Unprepared Carmudgeon Show.
Raw, in other tense.